excited
Yes.
to have you in this setting to just talk about
Yes, sir.
the way things are going within our church. Really excited. How's things going for your family?
Man, things are well. I'm an empty nester now,
Ooh,
enjoying this new season. I didn't know it was this good. But we got our kids are grown now, so both of them in the university. So we're in that phase of life, and we kind of come and go as we please now. We eating out all the time.
oh my,
Couldn't
oh
do that
my.
before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, man, it's a privilege. I've served with you
Yes.
in the Allegheny West Conference. You put your heart and soul into it. You probably spent some of your life's energies.
Yes.
um, tell me, what was the motivation for your call to ministry, and you coming into a regional conference? What was that like?
Interesting you asked that. I was just talking about this the other day with somebody, and we don't get that question a lot, and so every time I tell the story, the details of the story seem to change. My wife said this to me, but so I grew up pastor's kid. And I'm a second generation pastor. My mom worked for the denomination as a school teacher, as a in general conference administration. So when you grow up a PK, Doc, you ain't trying to pastor at all, because you just looking around at, what we got at the house, and people assume that you're doing better than you are. And I always promised my dad, I said, Dad, one day I'm gonna buy you a Corvette.
Oh my.
I said, I'm gonna get you a Corvette, because I saw my parents have the money struggles and stuff like that. And there's 5 of us. So, we were all in Christian education, because that's just, what we did. There was a time where we were at Pine Forge, and we had some at CUC and a bunch at Oakwood. And so I was just like, man, I just want to get my parents in a better position financially.
Mm.
So when I went to Oakwood, I changed majors about 3 times.
Wow.
But I settled on law because I said, well, lawyers make money. My mom was a lawyer. I didn't see the money coming with her, but I assumed that at least the ceiling was higher. And funny thing is when I'm at Pine Forge, I'm preaching, I'm
Right.
doing ministry stuff, but in my mind, I ain't doing that. Well, I get to Oakwood, and it was my sophomore year, and I'm sitting in E.E. Cleveland's class. I don't know how. And he's talking about the 4 calls of ministry. I don't know if the class was evangelism. I'm not sure what the class was. It could have been fundamentals of Christian faith. But anyway, he started talking about the 4 calls of ministry. What is it? Like the call from within, the call from without, the call from above, the call from beneath.
Right.
And man, I'm sitting in there, like a drunk in a tent meeting, getting convicted on the message. I'm shuffling my feet, man, and feeling like, man, is he talking to me? And so after the class is over, I go up to Elder Cleveland, and I say, Elder Cleveland, that was a dynamic presentation, but I just have one question for you. I said, how do you know for sure if you're called? And Dr. Cleveland, he would never look people in the eye. I don't know if he just had this aura about him that was otherworldly.
Right.
And man, he looked me in the eye, and he took his finger and he pointed in my face, and he said, whatever's consuming your thoughts the most, that's what God wants you to do.
Wow.
And what was in my mind was ministry. But what I was telling everybody was this is what I wanted to do. It was a fight. And from that conversation, I walked up into the administration building and changed my major. Interestingly,
Wow.
when I saw myself in ministry, I didn't envision pulpit ministry. I didn't see that. Maybe because as a pastor's kid, I had a panoramic view of what pastoring was. I kind of knew that my dad did more than just preach on Sabbath.
Right.
But one of the things that did inspire me about my parents and what they did is, our house was like a social services agency. We had about 70 people that ended up living with us before I left for Oakwood.
Right.
pulling people off the street. I'm the only biological child out of 5. My parents adopting folks. And I'm seeing people's lives change at family worship. I'm seeing people's lives change over the dinner table. I'm seeing this one brother who was at Allegheny West Conference. As a matter of fact, he down in Danville. He runs a food ministry by the name of Ralph Ryan.
Mm.
Ralph, became an international evangelist. But when he came to live with us, it happened. Crazy story. My dad was associate pastor at DuPont. He's driving down South Capitol Street. There's a liquor store. He sees a guy at the liquor store. He pulls over a 1977 Chevy Suburban,
Wow.
hops out, puts the hazards on, and I see him getting into an altercation with this guy at the corner of the liquor store. Well, my dad won the altercation, and he's dragging the guy to the car. And this guy ends up coming to live with us for the next 7 years. And I saw Ralph, that's Ralph, go from addicted to everything to
Wow.
being the personal ministries leader, the first elder, and then eventually he became an international evangelist. And so those were the things, honestly, that were in my mind that Dr. Cleveland was asking me, what's consuming your thoughts? Man, seeing people's lives change.
Sure.
My dad was very community engaged, my mom as well. And so those were things that inspired me, not even knowing that I had a gift for preaching or anything like that. But I said, that's good work. And it is the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about. And so I went to administration and changed my major just on that alone. And the whole time I'm at Oakwood, I don't think I preached, but maybe once.
Mm.
And it wasn't high profile. I wasn't, I was on the USM. I was executive vice president. I had those speaking opportunities, but I wasn't preaching. Most people didn't even know I was a theology major
Wow.
until I pastored because I was always in the gym hooping. I know that sounds familiar too,
Yes,
but
it does.
that's how I ended up.
I've always respected your gifts. The first time I heard you preach,
Mhm.
um, what came to mind was this guy uses um, not excitement. I'm struggling for the word. I mean, it's like shock therapy.
Provocation. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
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 yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Because it was you'd say things that were provocative, that would cause people to think.
Mhm.
And while people are reacting,
Mhm.
you are sharing truth, and they're open because they're trying to figure out how you are utilizing this thought. And I've really appreciated it. In fact, I would tell you that you just preached a sermon at Brinklow
Mhm, mhm,
about building an ark.
mhm, mhm.
And it actually capsulized in my heart and my mind what ministry is really all about.
Mhm, mhm,
You
mhm,
don't have to necessarily be in a pulpit
mhm.
to be involved in
That's
ministry.
right. Yeah.
I know there were shock waves all over the country when you left Grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I appreciated your transparency in terms of talking about why you
Mhm,
were
mhm,
doing it. Um, how long did it take you to struggle with what you needed to do
mhm.
to move to where you are in? And we will give you an opportunity
Yeah.
to talk about your
Sure.
ministry
Sure.
during this
Well, the
week.
struggle. Oh man. So I I did not even conceive that I'd be sitting here having this conversation probably until 2020. And, they call that year the year of the great 2020, 2021, great resignation. I think a lot of people, I think the quarantine, the pandemic,
Right.
sitting at home gave cause for pause. And a lot of us were thinking, but it wasn't something that I decided until 2023. But the
Okay.
thoughts began to enter into my mind of not pastoring. So for context, because I'm an institutional kid, I'm a regional conference kid. I'm a pastor's kid, all of those things, the Pine Forges and the Oakwood. Like, every degree I got is from an Adventist institution, and most of them are from a Black, institution.
Sure.
So that's just in me through and through. So the way I envisioned my assignment was I could only see, and this is kind of how I'm built, I could only see myself pastoring, period. I'd had departmental opportunities. I even had an administrative opportunity and turned those down to stay in Cleveland, Ohio, and to pastor Grace. Before that, I was in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, outside of Nashville, and I was there, according to Elder Dana Edmond, far too long than I should have. But, I don't know if it's just growing up at PK. I kind of know how the system works. And I feel like once you enjoy doing something, do it as long as you can. So I stayed even in that small church. I had 3 churches. They took 2 away, and that church really began to grow. And I think as a result of that, that's how I ended up, at my wife's home church, which is Glenville, now Grace in Cleveland. And so I was there 15 years. You were there for the majority of that time.
Yeah.
And you know that what I'm saying is true in terms of having the opportunities to go. But once I get fixated on what I feel like is a vision for what I want to accomplish, I'm like, I want to stay. And I'm a community pastor. That's how I view myself. I love Black people.
Yeah.
And I love, I see myself as a part of the solution to the Black issues that are plaguing our communities. I'm all in on that. And so being in Cleveland, pastoring that church, and the vision that God gave me, I saw no exit strategy at all. Until 2020, I started having the thoughts. And to me, that was enough for me to start saying, I need to start praying, because I never have these thoughts. I never had these thoughts. I never had thoughts about transitioning out of pastoring, and had no desire to go anywhere else, because we were quite comfortable with where we were. Well, I think I would say it was 2023. I was invited to be a part of a it's a spiritual formation retreat type event for pastors. It was not at Venice, but a lady by the name of Ruth Hallie Barton. She writes books on the Sabbath and on rest and on sabbatical and all those kinds of things. And so, I had a therapist at the time who recommended. He said, "Man, I think this would be something that you should," because I had been talking to him about stress and just burnout, but not to the extent where I felt like, I was ready to step away from pastoring because of those things. And that's not why I stepped away. So anyway, he said, I think you should go here. So man, it's um, a quarterly retreat, and we go, outside of Chicago, a place called Mundelein. And, there's days of prayer and seeking God and teaching, but there's one full day every time you go on this retreat, and it happens quarterly. And I do it for 2 years. I'm coming on up to the end of it. There's one full day every time you go on the retreat where it's a day of complete silence. You can't have a phone.
Oh, Lord.
You can't have a laptop. You can't have anything. It's a total unplug. When we go to eat, it's silence all day. And so I said, okay, let me try this. The second retreat I went on is a day of silence. And I didn't realize how much my soul needed that experience just to be able to hear from God. And man, I heard God the same way I heard God speak to me, telling me to come to Cleveland. The Lord said, you're done here. The specificity of what I was done doing, I didn't get until I went on the next retreat. And it was just the Lord opening this up. Now in 2020, because we're all at home, I started this men's ministry. But I never started it as a thing that I thought I was going to be doing. We got bills to pay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not thinking in terms of that. But I think once 2023 came along and my vision started getting clearer, I started hearing more clearly from God. Lord began to speak to my wife as well, which was a very strange thing because, my wife, she's not the mystical type. She doesn't normally receive dreams or visions, but my wife received a dream from the Lord.
Oh, my.
On this thing about this men's ministry that I was doing. And so the short answer to the question is, as a result of those things, we decided, I think God is leading us to pursue this thing full time. And that was a hard decision on so many different levels because I'm literally entering into a completely unknown space. As I mentioned before, I'm a completely denominational kid. I am Adventist through and through. I tell
Right.
my members all the time, most of y'all in here ain't more Adventist than me. Like it's in my bones. And so for God to create that, that sense in my mind, that impression in my mind, I had to weigh it. I had to dissect it and see and test it and see if it was real. And on the other side of it now, I see that it was real. And we started an international, what I call a men's personal development ministry that helps men, as we say, to win in what matters. Um, my story is directly attached to it because for on a number of levels. First of all, I saw how ministry, my parents, and I've shared that with you, did a lot to help and to heal people. But I also saw how their service to others, impacted their marriage. And as a result of that, my parents split. Simultaneously, while that's happening, me and my wife are having our challenges. And my wife literally said to me, dude, you a Superman at church, but you Clark Kent at home.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, that was a word from the Lord concerning Superman, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I got what she was saying,
Sure.
and I'm a hard charger,
Yeah.
Pastor. I get after it,
Right. Right.
um,
Right.
but I did not have I was not equipped as well as I should have been equipped in terms of understanding what my wife needed, what my children needed. I almost lost relationship with my son completely over some things that were happening as the way I was conducting myself. I have not been ashamed of telling people that while pastoring, I was battling addiction to pornography. So there was a duplicitous nature as to what was happening. I was quite successful pastoring,
Sure.
right? But simultaneously, I'm failing at home
Yeah.
and failing personally and not knowing where to get help and who to talk to and what am I supposed to do. And so my wife saying that to me was sort of the beginning of a healing journey for me that I started. Thank God for the churches. I look at any pastors, y'all have insurance, use it. Take advantage of the therapy sessions that you can get. Use it. You even get massages and all those things. I hadn't used any of those benefits.
Yeah.
I wasn't taking advantage of that. And nobody was beating down my door saying, and this is something we got to do better at from an administrative level, saying, take care of yourself. And this is how you take care of yourself. And so as a result of that, I began to do that. We began to go on a healing journey. And then I started noticing, as a result of sharing my story in different spaces, maybe even preaching, I'm getting a lot of men, not just pastors, lots of pastors, but a lot of men in general and a lot of wives reaching out to me saying, my husband needs help, my son needs help, blah, blah, blah. And it became overwhelming. So when I started the ministry, some competition started happening with what I was doing at the church. I'm in the middle of a multi-million-dollar building project, and I've got about 20 guys that I'm counseling on the side who are all in crisis. Because that's the only way a man will get to you is
Right.
if
Right. Right.
the
Right.
house got to be on fire.
Right.
So that's happening. And as a result of all of those factors, we took a step in faith and we pursued this ministry. Um, One of the questions I do get a lot is, why couldn't you have done this ministry in the institutional church? Well, I said, well, the ministry is happening. Those are not the instructions I got from God. However, I realized that a lot of the people that I was dealing with, um, and I'll say this just as an aside, man, I, I don't want to be hyperbolic or provocative, but I'll say I'm very convicted on this. One of the things that we deal with as pastors in our church is a bunch of unhealed men who are in leadership, whether they're elders. You can almost check any church, you rise and fall on who them elders are. And a lot of times these guys they're broken men, insecure, and they got issues. Well, these are the guys that I'm dealing with. And there's no men's ministry at church that they can feel safe to go into and talk about the affairs that they're having and talking about the mental health challenges that they're having and talk about some of the, various issues that they're having. So I realized that for a lot of men, 70% of our churches are female. So a lot of these guys see the church, for right, wrong, or indifferent, as a threat to their safety to be able to be vulnerable. And so I said, if I'm going to do this and be able to reach, especially the brothers that ain't here, the guys I went to Oakwood with, who are doing well, making some of them 7 figures, like, what's the entry point? What's the evangelistic strategy to reach these guys? And so what I deduced is the best way to do this is not to be attached to the denomination, the institution, but to work in partnership with the institution and not against it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm a pause right
Yeah.
here, and I'm looking into the camera, and I'm saying to those of you that are watching, if you know that what Dr. Edwin has just said, you need to call him. You need to check out his ministry. It will be beneficial to you. And while you are still a part of the denomination as a whole, I want to say that he's a safe place to get the kind of help that you need. What you have just shared, Myron, is a challenge, and there are multiplicity of challenges that we are facing. Sometimes, as in administration, we don't understand. Sometimes it can be challenges that we're having within our homes. I am sure there are many individuals, if you talk to their wives, they could repeat what your wife coined. You're Superman outside the house, but you're Clark Kent at home. Those are real issues. And it seems that we are not willing, particularly as men, to become vulnerable, to be able to share what our issues and concerns are. It is a part of why we decided to do this Wisdom Project. The Wisdom Project is to be able to talk to individuals that have enough confidence within what they are doing under the leadership and direction of God, to share their experiences and potential solutions to what we are going through right now. There is a real issue within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I'm going to be specific in reference to what takes place within regional conferences, of the challenges that our leadership, and when I say leadership, I'm not just talking about individuals in the office, but I'm talking about pastors, I'm talking about teachers, I'm talking about heads of home, the whole gambit, that are struggling with circumstances that, if they are honest with themselves, have overcome them. And there is a process of more and more individuals actually leaving pastoral ministry. Okay. The numbers that are coming out of our schools are not producing large numbers of individuals who are going into ministry. How do you see it? I mean, are you cognitively aware of the impact that these challenges are having on men in our church?
Oh, absolutely. Specifically, here's how I became more aware of the attrition I think that we're seeing. I started a program, and you may remember this. I started a program at Oakwood some years ago. I gathered up a bunch of my friends.
Right.
It was very informal, and I said, it'd be nice. We were having conversations about pastoring,
I remember.
and I said, man, it'd be cool if the students who are in the theology department could hear these conversations, it would make them maybe even reconsider, pastoring, because everybody's not fit to pastor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could give them, a reality check on what's really going on in the pastorate. Because sometimes, when you're in school, you're naive. It's glamorized, and you don't understand what is required, to do this job. And so a group of us, we went down, we started this thing called Code Red.
Right.
And I want to say we started in 2016. And man, every year that we went to Oakwood and we did this, the number of theology students was decreasing over and over again. Now I was wondering, I said, now, am I responsible for this? Maybe my program has caused the problem with attrition in church. But no, what we were discovering, just talking with, department chairs, Dr. Pollard, just people in general, is just, man, you know, in terms of ministry, period, people were not enrolling. The numbers are getting smaller. We were graduating fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer folks from the department. So, it became obvious to me that something was happening. And just to be honest, the you had more women in the department,
Oh,
right?
right. Right.
And so in some conferences, those women are unhirable depending on where they want to place them. So we even did a variation of this, an iteration of this at the seminary. And when I got to the seminary, I'm just amazed. Like, man, so many of these folks are chaplaincy. The seminary now has multiple offerings in terms of the MDiv program. You get MDiv, MSW, MDiv, Masters in Communications. And so there's a diversity that I started noticing in what people's understanding of ministry was. And let me say this. This is where my, you know, pastoral perspective comes in.
Okay.
When your Adventist schools, your Black Adventist schools are declining, right, in terms of attendance, right, in terms of the membership, we know that some of our schools are full, but they may not be full of Seventh-day Adventist African American children or brown children, right? When your youth ministries programs in your churches are empty, when you're not living in, most of our churches are not in the hot spots, I'm talking about a Huntsville or in Atlanta. Most of them are rural churches. So the churches are simply a modicum of what we are seeing and a microcosm of what we are seeing happen that's trickling down to ministry. Um, Glenville was one of those churches that produced, I'd say, dozens of pastors
Right.
and administrators in the church, where there was a machine there.
Mm-hmm.
Was a machine of school, of church, of family. Well, most of those things are gone now. And you and I, we talked about that before in
Right.
terms of support for the church.
Right.
And so I think it's a complex issue. It's not just one thing. It's not just that people are not interested in ministry. To me, it's a numbers issue. I think, first and foremost, it's a numbers issue that is attached to a spiritual issue. But there are some other challenges that I think that are happening in ministry as ministry is changing. Some people say ministry is disappearing. I think pastoring is not disappearing. I think it's transforming. And I think we have to catch up with the shift that is happening with pastoring. One of the things I remember you came to, you may not remember this, but you came to preach. This was a pivotal moment for me. I was the associate pastor for Benjamin Jones in Huntsville, Alabama, and you came and did a week of prayer there. And one of the things you talked about was spiritual gifts. And, our theology on spiritual gifts is that pastoring is not just a career, that it's a spiritual gift.
Right.
Right. And so if it's a gift, then the manifestation of that gift can be demonstrated in a multitudinous of ways. Well, our institutions are supporting that. We got chaplaincy ministries now,
Mm-hmm.
on every level of the church. We're encouraging, bivocational ministry in some spaces, lay pastors. So I think there's going to need to be an adjustment of our thinking to be able to stem the tide. I don't think it's all negative that we are seeing attrition with pastoring. I do think some of it does have something to do with maybe how what the expectations are for ministry. But I think a lot of it is Are we ready to make the shift that's happening in the world that everybody's experiencing? Here's the illustration I like to use. In the NBA, you can no longer, the track to be in the NBA is no longer be a great blue chip basketball player, go to Duke, go to Georgetown. They got a transfer portal now. They got NIL monies.
Right.
And so what did the NBA have to do? Ahead of that, they got ahead of it and said, we're going to get a developmental league, a G League.
G League.
And so they're developing and farming guys to bring in. I think in a sense, Adventist Black ministry needs to start thinking in terms of what's our G League? Where are we developing leaders and pastors that don't fit the mold of what we are expecting, which is a kid who goes to Oakwood, who graduates from Oakwood, goes to Andrews, and is now ready to be picked up. You may have to consider that MBA in your church. You may have to consider that dentist like Dr. Coopwood, who planted the church that I ended up pastoring in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Right.
You know, some of these things are in our DNA as a church. And I think at this point, we're going to be forced to consider them because the old track for ministry is no longer the track.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. I'm thinking of churches that were started by laity.
Yeah.
And not from an evangelistic meeting. And so that is very true. You seem to be very, I shouldn't say seem, you're very passionate about your upbringing, not only as a PK, but as an African American. You've gone to Pine Forge, you've gone to Oakwood. Your degrees are all from Adventist schools. There seems to be a disconnect, and I'm kind of shifting now. There seems to be a disconnect in reference to our history and a level of commitment to regional conference churches. As I shared with you, my wife has best friends forever. They all graduated from Oakwood in 1979. Okay, three of them now attend state conference churches, and one doesn't go to an Adventist church at all, and there are two left. What, if anything, can be done to help encourage individuals in terms of supporting regional conference churches? Because at the end of the day, what our history shows us is that while we really want to give the kudos to the leadership in reference to regional conferences, the General Conference voted to create regional conferences because the church at that time was not ready for integration. And it seems like we're having some challenges there, even in the ministerial ranks, of not being necessarily supportive of regional conferences. As a former administrator, that causes me concern. Now, as executive director of the retirement plan, again, that causes some concern because membership is what creates the dollars that allows our workers to retire with a sense of dignity. What any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So when we have these conversations, a lot of times we hear it in workers' meetings. We hear it, and I'd say mostly in pastors hear these conversations. Our members don't hear these conversations a lot. Typically This is not stuff that's preached about from the pulpit about the current state of what's happening. And
like you did
and-
in Brinkley.
yeah. But yeah, well, there's more of it happening now. That's what I'm about to say. So the best thing about this new president being in office and about his existence, period, and about what's happening is that I believe that a neo-civil rights movement is being birthed since George Floyd until now. And in my conversations with, and I'm only speak from my perspective, I went to Oakwood and, we have some super successful Black, young
No
adult
doubt
Adventists
about
out
it.
there who are
Yeah.
out there. We talk millionaire status. These are multimillionaires. These folks are moving in circles, and they are all products of this amazing institution. But for whatever reason, they have a bad taste in their mouth about the institution simultaneously.
Right.
And so we have to look at that. We can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, because then to call them the future would be disrespectful. We need them now, right? Well, the good thing about the new administration, the stuff that's going on in the world, is starting to make them reconsider some of their decisions about not supporting Black institutions, right? So I think that works to our advantage. What we need to do is I think we need to hop on that thing and ride that train and not ride the survival train. So a lot of the conversation that you hear from us is it's a survival mindset. So we'll talk dollars, we'll talk, the need, and if this doesn't happen, then we won't exist. That, to me, that's not the approach. I think the approach needs to be more proactive and more vision oriented. And mission oriented for sure. And, talking about what would happen if you came to a Black Adventist church. What would happen if you sent your kids to a Black Adventist school, instead of just saying, why are you sending them there? And, so forth and so on. I think we need to start really understanding what the research says about what happens with Black students that go to Black schools, that they are 10 times more likely for this to happen. And, Malcolm Gladwell's done a study about why Harvard is all smoke and mirrors, and why these Ivy League schools are nothing but, manufacturing factories to continue the prestigious, wealth, gap, and so forth and so on. They're not better. But that message needs to be communicated. It needs to be communicated in the churches. It needs to be communicated, from our, not only from our pulpits, wherever we can, that, man, we actually do have something, but simultaneously it's possible to honor what we have and be honest at the same time and say, we do need to change. Some of our church services, because you hear this all the time, service too long, and, I want to take my kids over here, where they got Sabbath school. Well, think about that. If you differently than my parents' generation, especially my grandmother saw vacation as going to camp meeting. Well, this generation now, they taking a cruise every quarter.
Right.
They have means. So they're not poor Black people anymore. And a lot of times our approach is an approach that is directed towards poor Black people. And I think what happened is a shift happened. And it's a shift because of us. We sent them to Oakwood. You sent them after that to get all these master's and doctoral degrees. They think differently now. They're sitting at different tables. They are engaged. They live in different neighborhoods. So their mindset is different. And Joe McCoy talks about this all the time.
Yeah.
Do you know how to speak the language to the affluent Black? Well, that's what Oakwood is producing. And so for many of them, they don't understand the survival talk that comes from so much of our gatherings of just supporting something because this is who we are. They don't function like that. They are going to go where they believe quality is. They are going to choose their families first. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the mindset. And we have to adjust our mindset to be able to reach our own people. We need to re-evangelize a whole generation, a couple generations that we've lost. If we start there, we could be baptizing 2,000 and 3,000 people a year, just with the folks that have come up in our institutions who are now thinking, you know what, I don't think I want to send my kids to a white school anymore with all the stuff that's going on in this country. Like, this is our moment. This is an opportunity. Like, we need to seize this, but we cannot seize it with the negative talk and with the you ought to and why aren't you? Like that's not going to work on this group of people. They're way more analytical. They think too much. They got Chat GPT now, where
Right.
they can. We ain't even talking about Google anymore.
Right.
They go put it in AI and figure out whether what you're saying is facts or not. So I think I would start there, just with
Okay.
how do we position ourselves to reach the affluent Black, because that's what we are missing in our churches, that trickles all the way down to what we're talking about pastors leaving, because it's their kids. Think about this, if somebody is, I'm thinking of somebody who lived right here in Atlanta. They own multiple practices, and the other spouse is in business. These are millionaires. How do we persuade them to send their kids to Pine Forge? And then this is how these things happen. These are where the seeds are planted for ministry. This is where it happens. But there's a disconnect between those people and what they're getting. And that's why we don't see them in our churches as such. And I think it trickles all the way down to a conversation that we're having now.
Yeah. Yeah. I am concerned from a perspective that, um, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. Um, our parents gave so much to us, and then we give so much to our kids. There doesn't seem to be an appreciation
Yeah.
for not having gone through the struggle.
Yeah.
When I sit down and I talk with my kids about growing up in the 50s and 60s and the 70s, and the challenges that we had, and we didn't want our kids to be in a situation that they would be turned away from a hotel or from a restaurant, or they'd have to drink from colored identified fountains. I mean, that's not something we wanted for them. But how can we communicate to them and the beneficiaries of the struggles that our ancestors have gone through, to value that struggle enough to participate in its growth? You're talking about Pine Forge, um, individuals that uh, the our counterpart schools have individuals who had means, and they put those means
Yes.
into the development of those schools. How can we encourage those who have been blessed by God through education and growth in their business ventures, so that they are now the top of the elite, to get involved in our schools, so that our schools are not lacking, but actually have the resources to begin to compete on a facilities level
Yeah. Yeah.
for our children.
It's funny. I've been thinking about that for a while now. It's just, I have all these ongoing conversations with folks I was in school with as why they do. My wife and I are a little bit different. We evaluate success differently. The way that the world evaluates success is, test scores, facilities, um, you know, prestigious names of schools and so forth and so on. But the research doesn't say none of that. And the Bible doesn't teach that,
Okay.
right? But the research says that the most important thing for a child to be successful, according to a study, is how acquainted, and this was a study on resilience. So it's specifically talking about how do you deal with adversity, which a lot of our folks who are in corporate are dealing with adversity. There's a guy who's in my men's group. He's a multimillionaire, and he just lost his job
Right.
making $500,000 a year working in corporate America.
Wow.
What's the number one thing? What's the number one thing? Well, the research says the number one thing that makes a person successful for the long haul is how acquainted they are with their family history.
Have mercy.
And so that goes back to your question. How do we educate folks on that? And you know what? God is answering our prayer right now. I'm not saying that I want any of what's happening politically to happen, but what it is doing is it's causing a resurgence in Blackness and an appreciation for what we have. This DEI thing that's happening right now, where folks are starting to get touched.
Yeah.
And they're starting to see that it's not about getting at the table. It's about creating your own table. So even what I'm doing, I'm a career pastor for 25 years, but I'm also a small business owner. My kids need to see that. My wife is a small business owner. We started a business. I own a business. I own and operate a business. I'm a CEO of a business. This is building an ark. I'm building something to leave legacy for my children and to leave for their children's children. And it's not just things, it is the decisions that we make that are vision driven for our people.
Right.
And when I looked at the text, Doc, all this time I was thinking in my mind that, Noah was telling everybody to get on the ark, but there wasn't no room for them on the ark. The scripture says, build an ark for your family.
Yes, sir.
And so I think in what's happening in our world right now, I believe is God working in an unusual way to get our folks to start to see that. And I think there is a receptivity right now to the conversation that we're having. Can I shift gears a little bit? How does this impact though? How does this impact this? When it comes to regional conferences, right? Here's where I think that we may have fallen short.
Okay.
I think we've stopped what made us who we were. When you think about it, and I'm going to go beyond, when regional conferences, the origin of regional conferences, I'm going to start earlier than that. And Black people were most successful, whatever they were. After slavery.
Right.
Because they had to.
Right.
They had to. My dad says all the time, growing up in North Carolina, he said the worst thing that ever happened to us there was integration. With the schools and the Black teachers and the Black history, all those things, they get bust across. So we lost a lot of that. Regional conferences need to hold their heads up right now and seize the moment and stop thinking in the survival mindset that we have. We're at a great opportunity right now to recast a vision to our people that our relevance matters right now with what's going on in politics. Now, what does that look like? Man, it means that these same poor folks that started HBCUs, right? They started the NAACP, Black Wall Street, which I got a chance to go see there in Tulsa. Like all of that stuff came out of ingenuity, innovation. I think we stopped doing that. We keep running the same play. And we're doing it also, which I think is part of the conversation we're here, with pastoring. Like, you cannot assume that guys are going to, with the way that life has changed, want a monolithic idea of what career looks like. We know it's a calling, but you can't have it both ways. You can't teach spiritual gifts and calling and vocation is different from occupation. And then when you get to pastoral ministry, you conflate those things together and then tell a guy he's not in ministry anymore. See, I'm saying it's those intellectual conversations that we have to be intellectually honest with. We've been teaching our members, the laity, you are ministers. So then when a pastor decides he wants to shift out of pastoring into lay ministry, then we start saying, well, I wonder why he's leaving. Didn't you teach me that I'm supposed to listen to the Holy Spirit and that the gifts, without repentance, and then I can, what we need to do is get more creative as to whether we are a working environment that's going to be able to retain people for the long haul. Them days over. And they're over because financially, people do not have to depend on the denomination. I'm just going to be frankly honest. I debated whether I was going to say this.
Say it.
When I was working at Allegheny West Conference, I was getting paid taking out taxes and all the other things I had to take out. I was getting paid $2,700 such and such dollars every 2 weeks. Doc, I'm just telling you, it ain't hard for people to make $2,700 every 2 weeks now. That's one of the reasons why we are seeing guys not feel the need to stay, because they don't have to. My dad's generation had to, but every pastor goes through a season of his pastoral ministry, if he's honest, where he's like, you know what, I think I want to be challenged differently. Well, here's the issue where it comes to blacks. White folks, they got a bunch of options. A bunch of my friends, they all got hired. You know what the jobs they got? They got the job working for Advent Health as the VP for Director of Missions. Those are $265,000 to $300,000 jobs. You mean to tell me if I'm pastoring a church and somebody calls me to work for the hospital system and I'm not gonna take that job? I'm gonna take the job every time. It's a new challenge. It's a better opportunity. It's better for my family. But nobody says to those guys they're leaving ministry because they're still part of the denomination, because they have more options. In the black work, we got one university. In the black work, we got one boarding school. In the black work, we have no more hospitals. So where are we being funneled to go? There's only 8 conferences for administrative opportunities. So that leaves me 24, C-suite jobs. So you expect me to work 40 years and I may or may not get one of those opportunities? Well, now a guy says, I can start my own opportunity. Or I can go to military and make $110,000 a year. And guess what? I'll be a colonel and I'll be over 10,000 people on a base. Every man and every woman all has a desire for a new challenge. When they ask you to be president, you're gonna take that opportunity. And nobody should call you political or say that there's something, you're not spiritual. You're a human being and you want a new challenge. If all of these folks thought pastoring was great, they ain't crawling to go back in it either, because it's stressful, it's hard work. And at some point you do want to be challenged in a different vein. I think what's happening in the regional work is we have fewer opportunities for upward mobility, and there's more diverse opportunities that our world is offering for ministry. There's a guy I know, there's a chaplaincy position at Tyson's Food. They're hiring chaplains to come and to give guidance and counsel and teach resiliency. And these people are making $200,000 a year. This is the challenge. It's just a human challenge. It's a real challenge. Right. And their gifts, depending on who they are, they can serve at a local church under a pastor, still preach. We need to think about bivocational. We need to think about planting more churches and creating more opportunities. But I think that's what's happening right now. It's not all that the regional conference is bad. Pastoring is stressful. People are being challenged in different ways. More opportunities are available. People gonna take them. I talked to a pastor the other day. I said, if a administrative opportunity came open for you, you pastored now for 20-something years, would you take it? He said, yesterday, I'd take it. He said, I'd love to be challenged in that way. And nobody says they left ministry just because they're still a part of the institution. We gotta stop doing that. Ministry is ministry. Don't teach me ministry, it means service. And then because I'm not working for the institution no more, I ain't ministering. You can't preach that in the pulpit and then change your mind when it happens, with a pastor. This is what's happening. And so because of these options, guys are moving in that vein. And I think it's a healthy thing. And I think if we leaned into it and capitalized on it, we could actually succeed at it. I know physicians right now full of the Holy Spirit who, if we train these guys and create a G League, they make great pastors. And you and I both know pastoring is way more than preaching. Right? Yeah. Some people just have the knack for that spiritual gift, but they didn't go to seminary. So there's opportunity.
Well, that's why the Lord put you on my heart to come and say that, share information that is not easily shared. And I thank you for that. Myron, you've always, in my mind, been a guy that was led by the Lord. And I appreciate your ministry. I appreciate it while you were in Allegheny West Conference. I appreciate what you're doing right now in this calling and phase of your life. And I am praying that God will continue to bless you exceedingly and abundantly
Oh,
above
yes.
anything that you could ever ask
Yes,
or
Lord.
think. We only have 2 minutes left. If there is anything else you would want to say to the audience, this is an opportunity to do it.
Yeah, sure. Only thing I would say is this. First of all, this is my president, and I love him, and I thank you for this opportunity. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the work I'm doing. And I know there's so many men out there who are looking for a safe space. You know how to be successful in your profession, but you don't really know how to put it together in your personal life. And I'd love to be a support to you. We've created communities, we've created one-on-one experiences, and all our information is at menswinningscircle.com. But if you're one of those brothers, you're like, I want to win in every area of my life, then Dr. Myron Edmonds would be a great person to help you along your journey of discipleship to becoming more like Christ. God bless you.
All right. Is that the only way they can get in touch with you?
I'm on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook. Just put my name in there, Google me, and I'll come up. So, and my website personally is myronedmonds.com.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Doc.
This time has been phenomenal for me, and I know others that will take the opportunity to look and to listen and to learn will benefit from our time together. God bless you. This is one of our videos for the Wisdom Project. We believe that the more information we provide, the better choices that we will make. God bless you and have a wonderful rest of your day.